But again, these false prophets, they use this as an opportunity not to find ways in which they can help people, send relief, or be a part of any type of humanitarian effort. They're not thinking about helping these people. They're sitting here mocking people, basically, and showing how inhumane they are, how devilish they are, because they're only concerned about them being right and people flocking to them to say that they're the power of God or they're the voice of God. Oh, they've been telling us Babylon is going to be destroyed. Well, my question to them is, what makes you think that Los Angeles or America is Babylon? And a lot of these folks, especially here in the US, they have these United States focused prophecies because they are ignorant of anything else going on in the world. And so only when a calamity happens in the United States do they say that's prophecy being fulfilled. When the United States ain't even mentioned in the Bible. People eisegete, or in other words, they insert the US into prophecy to fit their narrow-minded view of scripture, but it's not there. America is connected to other systems. The country itself will just be celebrating its 250th anniversary. It's one of the youngest countries yet and still on the face of this earth in comparison to other ancient countries and lands. Yet, they have made the United States of America the culmination of all prophecy and the Babylon that the Bible has been speaking about since 2,000 years ago and before. This is how short-sighted they are. And I want to show you some things here. Problems and questions about America as Babylon. And just put your thinking cap on. We want to think about these things here. Look, question number one. Why is the focus only on America as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy? The reason why that is because, again, the people doing it live here. And so they don't see prophecy or understand anything outside the scope of where they are. And some of them got the audacity to write books about lands overseas or on the other side of the world, which they've never been to. They're not archaeologists. They're not geologists. They're not historians or anything. They just bootleg Hebrew false prophets sitting in their apartment or their house, making up stuff and making money off of it. And gullible people are falling for their trickery. All right. And so this is because, number one, these folks hate America. They hate the United States, and they always proclaim doom and gloom. And here's what's crazy. You live here and are declaring destruction where you live. That's like praying for destruction in your living room while you're there. They don't pray for salvation. They pray for destruction. They don't try to fulfill the Great Commission to preach the gospel to every creature, to lead people to repentance and salvation. No, they want to see destruction. That's a sick mentality, sadomasochistic. It desires suffering and pain. That's what gets these folks off. There's no spirit with them. Unless it's just the devil's spirit, because that's not the heart of God. If the Lord was so merciful that he sent the prophet Jonah to Nineveh, to the Assyrians, who by most historians are considered the most cruel empire in the history of the world, and he sent his prophet Jonah to preach to those people to repent so that he could spare them from judgment, why wouldn't he do it to America? Some of the greatest preachers in the world have come out of America in spite of America's sins. Some of the greatest evangelists who've taken the gospel the furthest have come from America in spite of America's sins. America is wicked. It was very sinful. But you won't find a country or a nation on the face of this planet that isn't. You can try to compare who's the most wicked, but sin is sin. It don't matter. They all gonna be judged. And the people that make up these nations will be judged. And some of these folks sitting on their high horse, these sanctimonious, holier than thou folks making these false prophecies, they're going to be judged first. Because they're so self-righteous, they think they've already made it. So they focus on America out of tremendous bias. And the history of America, has a lot of shameful events that we're not very far removed from, and we're still seeing the residue of. But then the question number two, why aren't these false America is Babylon and Egypt? Because that's what they say, America is Babylon and Egypt. It's two different places at the same time. America is Babylon and Egypt prophets ever aware of or concerned with disasters in other places as prophetic fulfillment? Why they're never concerned with any place else, just America? This is a question that should be asked. Number three, when did UFOs or spaceships become part of biblical doctrine as the method or means in which Israel will be caught up or rescued? Yeah, I've heard some crazy stuff. I heard people say that Elijah was caught up in a spaceship. Ezekiel saw a spaceship. They always run to sci-fi supernatural type of stuff. But here's the thing. People in the Bible, a lot of times the Bible is very literal. It's not always figurative. And then when the Lord would appear to people and show up, he would most likely, almost for certainly, show up in a manner in which they could identify, which is why you see the descriptions in the Bible. If it says Ezekiel was taken away in a fiery chariot, then that's exactly what happened. Because it would have been something that had the same appearance of something they were familiar with in their day. He didn't pick Ezekiel up in a spaceship, but you got people that believe that. And because they don't understand the description of what Ezekiel saw, well, they turn it into something science fiction like and make it into, he saw a UFO. So and think about the foolishness of this. We serve a supernatural God that literally can raise the dead, create the universe with a word, can part the Red Sea so people can walk across on dry land and do all types of other miracles. And they still believe he needs technology. So what, the angels riding around heaven on heavenly scooters? They swooping down, Gabriel coming down, talking to Mary on a jetpack skateboard? Is that going to be in the next translation of the Bible? They going to turn the scriptures into the Jetsons? But this is the kind of foolishness that's coming out of a lot of these people. Question number four, if Africa is experiencing a high rate of disease and natural disasters like America, then why are these false prophets telling us to flee there? Now I already can hear folks saying Africa's not experiencing this. Oh, they act like Africa is a perfect utopia that don't go through nothing, because it's always back to Africa. And a lot of these folks claim to be Israelites, but they're telling you to go back to Africa and some of them saying, oh, that's where the real Israel is. They don't even know what's going on. So they write these bogus books without researching the geography or the geology, which is highly important to understand where it is you're going, because they have no idea what's happening on the African continent. They're going by what they think. They say Israel is a desert. There's nothing there. That's because they have no idea of the geology of Israel, nor of its geography, and how plush many of the parts of Israel are. And they don't know how dangerous many of the places in Africa are. And I'm not talking about because of people, but I'm talking about because of the geology, all the volcanic activity, the poison gas that rises out of some of those lakes and some of the ground. The places that they exalt and tell people this is where the real Jerusalem is, such as in the highlands of Ethiopia, is some of the most dangerous land on the face of the planet. That's why people don't live there in large numbers. I like what my brother Moore says. They went from Israelites to Africanites. Exactly. And even the Israelites in Africa, they don't even believe that mess. I live in an Ethiopian community. And I think it's quite interesting that folks would write a book talking about Ethiopia is the real Israel and not even talk to any Ethiopians or not even take a trip there. So again, this is kind of fantasy fiction stuff. And they don't know, again, what's going on. I'm going to show you an entire playlist that I put together just to give you an idea of what's going on in Africa within the last few years. And we're going to look at some maps and stuff too from NASA to show the distribution of wildfires. Question 5, why don't these false prophets have a clear plan from Yah on how to flee from America if he is telling them so much about us leaving? Because you know what they'll do when people ask, well, when are you fleeing? They'll say, well, you flee when God tell you. But you keep telling us that we got to flee. Well, now they're switching it up. We didn't tell you to flee. We telling you you're going to flee. It always change it up. And then they go back and manicure their playlist so you can't find this information where they actually said these things. But eventually they slip up and get caught. And when they get caught, they lie their way out of that. You know? And so you hear these types of things. Then it says, you know what? Today, you fanatics gonna be shut down because you're gonna shut up and listen today. Because I'm gonna deal with all your foolishness about come out of her and all this flee stuff. Yeah, we're gonna go through the actual scriptures, and we ain't gonna piecemeal none of these scriptures. We're gonna actually read. We're gonna break it down. That's what we're gonna do. So any of you that show up in the chat and you want to filibuster, you're gonna be busted. I ain't even gonna put you on timeout. I'm just gonna delete you and ban you so you can't say nothing else. And you can sit there mad and upset, but you're gonna listen if you're gonna stick around. If not, leave and go listen to some more lies. And so how do you know which African country to flee to? There's 52 countries on the African continent, or 54, something like that. They don't tell you where to go. But God gonna tell all these folks to flee and go to Africa somewhere. And they don't know nothing about where they're going. I mean, are they all the promised land? Is every last one of these countries the promised land? They don't know. And so you have all these different questions and things that people can't answer because they just get people's emotions whipped up. And that's exactly it. They're liars. They have all these false dreams, all these false visions and things of this sort, and ain't none of the stuff true. You know, let me show y'all something. I want to show you all something. We're going to look at natural disasters in Africa because the same things that happen in the US, it also happens in Africa. But why isn't, when it happens in Africa, why isn't that prophecy being fulfilled? Why isn't that Babylon? Because they say Babylon is America. All right. But let's look at some videos of what's happening in Africa that they don't report on. They don't have any prophecy for these things. Let's watch.
Elsewhere, it isn't a happy start to the new year for thousands of traders in Ghana's capital, Accra, who are counting their losses after a devastating fire swept through Kantamanto Market early this morning. The cause of fire is still under investigation, with authorities working to assess the extent of this damage. No casualties have been reported. Kantamanto is one of the world's largest second-hand markets for clothes from the global north. Sprawling with thousands of stalls crammed up with clothes, one can find items from H&M, Tesco, New Look, and more. Indeed, thousands of traders have been left in despair, with many appealing for support from the government to rebuild their businesses and to improve market safety measures. Now, this is what the spokesperson from the Ghana National Fire Service had to say.
What we are doing currently is to do overhauling, where we would ensure that all the packets of fires that we see around in the smoky form are cooled to ensure they are totally extinguished. As we speak now, over 100 structures, the stores and then the metal containers have been badly affected. And this is also because it is not a properly planned market. All manner of waste, but predominantly they deal in second-hand clothing. Some of the containers had flammable solvents and paint as well, and that made firefighting very difficult.
And joining me now is the BBC's West Africa correspondent, Komla Adom. Komla, thanks, and good to see you in the new year, of course, to talk about a heavy subject here. Maybe you could begin by updating us. What's the latest on the investigations, or what are the authorities saying about what could have caused this fire? And also, how much of the market was affected by it?
Well, Waiga, authorities have told the BBC in the last few minutes that they have begun an assessment to take inventory of the exact extent of damage. We speak about the number of stores that have been affected and also the number of traders who have lost their wares to this fire. In fact, earlier in the day, many of the traders had thronged the fire scene to attempt to salvage what they could of what was left of their wares, but that was unsuccessful, as many of those who had thronged the site looked on helplessly as the fire consumed the entire stretch, which is believed to be bigger than the size of 3 standard football pitches.
And of course, we've seen some pictures of the traders trying to rescue or recover what they can. What have they been telling you?
Well, for many of these traders, that's the livelihood, their entire livelihood that has been destroyed in one fire incident. They say some of them have had to go to the bank to get loans to be able to run these businesses. And as you know, it is the largest textile market in the country. And so many of the traders or vendors come from all across the country to this particular location, the Kantamanto market, to purchase secondhand or thrift clothing to sell, onward sale. And many of the celebrities have also been visiting this particular enclave to purchase used clothing and other clothing to reuse and repurpose them for fast fashion. They say that's all their livelihoods that have been lost on the first day of the year 2025, and they want the government to make an intervention by way of payment of compensation. A few hours ago, the Greater Accra Regional Minister Titus Glover and the Mayor of Accra both were at the fire scene to empathize with the traders and to also assure them that an assessment will be done, after which the incoming government will be recommended to pay some compensation.
I have 4 shops. All the shops are even burned. I don't know where I will even go. And the women are crying. They are suffering. They are suffering. They are pleading to the government. They are crying. So we're pleading to the government to come and help us.
We've lost a lot. Not I alone. Everyone in the yard. You could see it yourself. It's very bad.
This fire, thing has been something that has been disturbing us for so many years. And we've been hoping that, governments will come help us. Structure is very well, in the metal form. But then we'll talk and talk. It will look like they are showing some kind of care to go and then later bounce back. We'll still come into our, normal ways now.
Was there a fire prevention, fire safety plan, for example, for this market?
Waiga, there absolutely not. Many of the structures there, according to local authorities, are improperly planned and structures that were put up without any proper structure. And so even the fire authorities tell us they had to struggle to assess the place when they received the distress call for the emergency that had happened on the dawn of Thursday. When they got to the sites, they had a hefty time to get through to fight the fire. According to many of the local authorities as well, these are structures that do not have metallic or block works, and so with the least trigger of a fire, it will completely go down in ruins, and that's exactly what happened. But local authorities say if the market is to be rebuilt, they will recommend that the local authorities ensure fire protection, fire safety, and surveillance cameras specifically to observe the activities in the market to prevent any such occurrences in future.
Now, somebody might say, well, that's not as big as the LA fires. That was just a large market. Did you hear how large that market is? And how many vendors had their livelihood destroyed? And the fact that it's the largest in the country of Ghana, and that people come from all over to shop there. But if that's not big enough for you, let's move to some other natural disasters, because these people seem to be so focused on fire. You know, it's interesting. I preached a message last year, just a few weeks ago, called "It Happens in the Fire." Because fire is used not only for destruction, but it's also used in the scriptures to build things up, to test people, to try your faith. But they never seem to talk about it that way. It's only when it's destroying something that all of a sudden is it biblical. But let's look at some other disasters that happen in a lot of these same places that they're telling folks to flee to.
Hello and welcome to my daily disaster news channel.
This again is Accra, Ghana.
The information in the video shows an incident on June the 16th, 2022 in Accra, Ghana.
Serious. This is the devastation.
Police issues alert after hours of rainfall that leaves part of the capital submerged. The National Disaster Management Organization has urged people living in flood-prone areas to move to safe havens and higher ground as more rain is expected tonight. The security of the flooding caused a gridlock on the stretch of the Accra-Kasoa road, leaving road users helpless. Some commercial vehicles got stuck in the flood water, compelling passengers to disembark and walk. It was also observed that the premises of some businesses, including fuel stations, were inundated with flood water. Subscribe to the channel.
The lower Volta Basin in Ghana is grappling with a dire situation following the release of excess water from the Akosombo and Pond dams, leading to severe flooding. The resilient residents are fighting against both the fury of nature and the deluge caused by man-made actions, with their very existence hanging in the balance. 46-year-old Kojo Achu is one of over 33,000 people who are now homeless by Monday, October 16. He and his family were saved just before his 3-bedroom apartment collapsed.
The water in this community is very, 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 very bad for us. More than 1 week, we couldn't do anything about this water.
Critical installations, including hospitals, mosques, schools, banks, and marketplaces, are all underwater. The National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, with support from the Ghana Navy and other security agencies, are frantically working to relocate the affected people.
I would demand a probe into this affair. People must not get away, so that most importantly, there will be reforms and this will not recur. And then we must be thinking about an engineering solution as a country.
Health experts fear a potential outbreak of waterborne diseases.
They can get cholera outbreaks. We can get typhoid outbreaks over there because of the pooling and puddling of water all over. Malaria cases may be on the rise as well.
The Akosombo and Pond dams play a crucial role in providing hydroelectric power, producing about 1,072 megawatts of Ghana's total energy mix. The spillage, which appears to have no end in sight, is to protect the dams from collapse.
The spilling may continue, even though they are anticipating that the levels may drop down to the phase 1. And to safeguard this dam, it means that we have to spill water.
As of Thursday, October 12th, the water level was 276.92 feet, 0.92 feet above the maximum level.
Now, you remember
Accra
when
residents were grappling with flash flooding on Tuesday.
there's another flood. Let's stop it right here. But we recently here in the South had a snowstorm. We have another snowstorm coming in. Well, actually, probably won't be snow, but we'll probably definitely get freezing temperatures. But I want to show you a snowstorm that happened that didn't get reported on by none of these false prophets. Took place in South Africa. And a lot of this stuff is recent, either as early as this year, last year, or within the last few years. But you haven't heard anything about it from any of these prophets, have you? You haven't heard them proclaiming doom and gloom and destruction and prophecy being fulfilled, have you? Watch this.
It's been a tireless year for disaster management and emergency teams in KwaZulu-Natal. The province experienced a series of natural disasters. Environmentalists have attributed these to the effects of global warming. These disasters took place while the province was still recovering from the catastrophic 2022 floods, which claimed over 430 lives. The year commenced with floods which left a trail of damage and leaving thousands homeless.
Really, it has been devastating for all of our businesses. We are fortunate enough to be open today thanks to the help of the community, and in particular Tidy Towns. They've really pulled out all the stops to get people access down to our beach and back into our businesses. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the community is still cleaning up their own homes and organizing themselves.
We have an issue here with Hunter's Stream. So due to the infrastructure and lack of maintenance, unfortunately, on our stormwater drains, as well as the infrastructure from our municipality, the drainage collapsed and it caused Hunter's Stream, which runs from the top of the main road all the way down to the beachfront, to cause all the damage you're seeing here today.
Parts of Otongati, north of Durban, was hit by a tornado that left a trail of destruction, including the loss of lives. This saw national government classifying the area a national disaster.
Now, I want you to pause for a minute, because this is all in the same place. We've already seen they had flooding. Then she just said they got hit with a tornado. Keep watching.
We have nothing now. We need government to help us with school uniform for our children who are no longer going to school because all their belongings were destroyed in the storm. We were in long queues yesterday and we didn't get anything. Let's hope we will get something today. We need corrugated iron sheets to rebuild our structures.
In July, hundreds of failed fires ravaged various parts of the province in
Now, we went from flooding to tornadoes to fires, all in the same place.
Boston area of Mpopomeni in the Midlands, 6 firefighters died whilst battling a runaway fire.
We received this call as a grass fire, like a normal grass fire call, only to find that it's quite a huge grass fire. There were already teams trying to fight this fire, but not our district firefighters. Apparently, privately employed firefighters, which includes Usapi Forestry firefighters, and Nabalimi Bendao and local farmers were also assisting in quelling this grass fire.
And finally, the province also experienced a snowstorm which left hundreds of road users and trapped the end.
Now, all in the same place, flooding, tornado, fires, and look, now a snowstorm. All in one of the places that they're telling folks to flee to. But only America is Babylon. This ain't prophecy being fulfilled. Why? Yet people are losing their lives. And this place has experienced just about every type of natural disaster you could think of. And here's one of the differences that you need to understand when wildfires take place in a place like Africa versus in Los Angeles County, where you have homes and businesses being destroyed. It's because somebody might say, because this is what people do all the time with this comparative suffering thing. Well, they don't have buildings and stuff being burned down. Yeah, they have some, but they have crops being destroyed, cattle being burned up, things that people actually need to live off of, to eat, and all of these other things. The impact is tremendous for these people. And let's keep watching. Let me stop interrupting.
3 toll routes along Van Rienen's Pass between KZN and the Free State was closed due to heavy snowfall.
We were after Montrose, after Montrose, that's where the road got bad. So we were there from last night at about 8:30 till 6 this morning. So it was bad.
6 a.m. The road was only open at 6 a.m.
Yes.
I see that we've got the little ones. How did they cope in that cold night?
No, they've got the devices in the car, so they at least could play, Yeah, but it was frustrating because you're trying to warm up the car, but now you're also thinking of the battery, you're thinking of fuel, and we didn't know where the garage was, the closest one. So we got stuck for hours, but we at least survived.
And then we started looking for accommodation, and there was no accommodation. So everyone had taken up accommodation, and we went. We eventually found a place called Entby out in the mountains. And they did warn us. They said, listen, the roads, guys, are not ideal, but we were looking for a bed and warm water. So we got out there. We got stuck just before their gates. So they pulled us out with a tractor. Only to get there, they had no electricity, no water. But thankfully, we had a bed and we had a fireplace. So we stayed warm through the night.
In response, the KwaZulu-Natal government announced that it would launch a climate change and sustainability council.
This will bring all the relevant stakeholders under one roof to emerge with a coordinated provincial response to climate change in the province. It is our mission to integrate ecosystem-based approaches into climate change adaptation and mitigation, the disaster risk reduction, and other strategic plans that need to be factored into localized programs. This broad insight will foster shared implementation of climate policy and programs to build a resilient and adaptive society and economy in KwaZulu-Natal.
Environmentalists have indicated that frequent flooding in KwaZulu-Natal is likely to be the new reality. Residents, especially those living in low-lying areas, are warned to take special care during storms. Nonjabulo Mtungwa Makamu, SABC News.
Moving on now, West and Central Africa are battling severe floods after several spells of heavy rain. Nearly 760,000 people have been affected due to the devastating floods till now. Faso, Cameroon, Ghana, Niger, Mali, Nigeria, Congo, Republic, and Senegal are among the worst affected nations due to floods. According to the latest figures by UN, at least 111 people died in the natural calamity. Niger has been battling with rain since August. Water is yet to recede in parts of the capital city. Now, since torrential rains caused rivers to burst their banks. Over 32,000 houses have been damaged and nearly 5,768 hectares of farmland inundated in the country. Nearly 333,000 people have been affected by heavy flooding in Niger alone. Over 188,000 people have been affected in neighboring country of Chad. UN body has issued a warning of potential flood shortages due to extensive damage on farming lands and crop productions. The forecast for heavy rain in coming days would make the situation worsen further. Food scarcity, political unrest, mass displacement, and in some areas have significantly brought down communities' ability to cope with natural disasters. Now, the data suggests that over 25 million people are in need of humanitarian aid in this region.
buran marak bali ay ay teme xayla dogo maray idol way in keelena kraate dogo yak marayan la garan diake anah garan suga anah furana tanur dalo dogo Burahabay tamagu barai kakada gumash.
Now I want you to keep in mind that's Ethiopia now, where you have certain false prophets out here saying it's the real Israel. Let's look at some more stuff about Ethiopia, though, and some other places in Africa. And then again, I'm going to ask the question, why aren't these places considered to be part of prophecy when these disasters are happening to them? But it's only America that's focused on. Can you all still see this really good? Because I tried to fit this into the screen. Can you all give me a 1 if y'all can still see this real good before we go to the next video? And you know, one of the things is you see all the different groups providing all types of humanitarian aid. But you know who you won't see providing any type of aid or help or saying anything positive or praying for people? You won't hear these false prophets doing it. You won't hear them doing it. You know why? Because it's not profitable for them to do it. Because they're all about death and destruction, doom and gloom, to prove that they're true prophets, to prove what the word of the Lord is. They're not about salvation. They're not about any type of help or any type of hope at all.
Let's also touch base again on the earthquake and volcanic situation in Ethiopia because things are heating up. We've had significant earthquakes today, a 5.5, a 5.2, a 5.0 just in the past 24 hours. This 5.5 actually may be the strongest earthquake yet in this entire sequence that's been going on since October, but really has gone nuts in the past month. There's been new hydrothermal activity there. Some big mud volcanoes and explosions have been occurring. You can see that here. But just today, big increase in earthquakes. And if we go to our 30-day view, this is insane. Check out how many earthquakes have happened in this map region over the past 30 days, greater than magnitude 4.5. A tremendous amount, clearly showing that this is related to volcanic intrusions underground, because this isn't defined by a single, let's say, magnitude 6 or 7, and then these are aftershocks. This is all just tectonic activity being caused by the intrusion and the movement of magma below the surface.
Now listen to what he said, because this is Ethiopia. These are major earthquakes occurring in Ethiopia. This video was made 13 days ago. So that means 2025, because today is the 16th. This is the type of activity that's been happening since then. Volcanic intrusions. So a lot of the territory or land where Ethiopia is, the reason why you see it fertile or fertile looking in certain places is because of the volcanic activity. But there's also a lot of areas where they can't live because of the amount of volcanic activity. And over the last few decades, it's been increasing. It's been increasing so much so to the point where scientists believe that in many years, of course, it's going to take, but if the world continues as it is, Africa is going to actually split in this very area and create either a new waterway, like a new sea or a new ocean almost, but the continent's going to be split because of this activity. Let me keep playing it for you. But this is where they say the real Israel is. This is the promised land. This is where you're supposed to flee to.
Clearly, these volcanoes here are waking up. We have a few different volcanoes in this region. We have Fatal right there. Then we
hold on, multiple volcanoes in the place where the real Israel is, in the place where you're supposed to flee to. Keep that in mind.
We also have Dauphin up here. It's not as nice of a volcano, you can say, right there, but still exists. That's actually where we've had some of this recent activity with these mud geysers and things of that nature. You can see how localized all these earthquakes are. We're not seeing any earthquakes over here or in these other regions. If I zoom out further, you'll see again, this is showing all the earthquakes greater than magnitude 4.5 for this map region. They are all clustered there, clearly showing that there's some sort of volcanic activity that looks very, very imminent in this region right next to Addis Ababa. So this could be very, very big. Wanted to point this out. And also for those of you that watch some other content creators, you'll notice that this is right here in this Indian Ocean area, and it's the Rift Valley of Africa. So I think you can all decipher what I mean there. So we'll just have to wait and see with what is happening in Ethiopia, but this looks like it's building up really, really quickly with this 5.5 today. This could happen anytime now. We could have like big volcanic activity out of Ethiopia at any moment now.
Kenya.
An update now on the extreme flooding out of Kenya. Officials say 40 people have died in western Kenya after a dam collapsed there. It comes as the death toll in the country surpasses 100 due to flooding. This is an aerial view of that flooded river, the Tana River. The Red Cross there says 23 people were rescued after a boat capsized after heading to a village. More people are missing. The extreme flooding is causing schools to postpone their second terms, and nearby Tanzania and Burundi are also dealing with extreme flooding as well.
Ethiopia again. Earthquake.
In the arid plains of central Ethiopia, a few makeshift tents are laid out among the bushes. They provide shelter for hundreds of families displaced by a series of earthquakes that have struck the country in recent weeks. Many had to leave their homes in a panic and left all their belongings behind.
I left with my elderly mother and my children. We had no time to bring anything with us. It was a natural disaster. We had to run for our lives.
The Ethiopian states of Afar and Oromia have been shaken by dozens of powerful earthquakes in the past month. The two states are located along the Rift Valley, one of the most seismically active regions in the world, but experts say the latest quakes were the most intense in at least 10 years. Fearing the collapse of the newly built Renaissance Dam, Ethiopian authorities evacuated over 60,000 people since December. Many ended up in overcrowded camps where resources are often lacking, despite frequent aid deliveries.
They are providing us with food, but there are many people here, and it's not enough. This is a dusty and dry area, and we don't have enough water.
As they wait for the support of international aid agencies, local authorities set up a makeshift clinic next to the camp. But here, too, there's not enough qualified personnel to care for the hundreds of patients who come every day to seek treatment.
This is happening right now while the fires are burning in LA.
Devastating drought in East Africa. As many as 20 million people could be starving by the middle of this.
Now, this video is from a year ago, but the drought is still ongoing in Ethiopia. The previous video was from just a day ago. Now, look at all this desert land here in Ethiopia, but what you've been told by these false prophets is that Israel is just a desert where there's nothing. Yet they have no idea of the geography and the geology of places in Africa. Why? Because they only zoom in on the parts that people show you that are lush and green. But yet they ignore this tremendous amount of suffering that's been going on. Let's keep watching.
as recently a powerful earthquake and volcanic eruption struck Ethiopia, causing widespread destruction and chaos. Now, the magnitude quake hit the eastern part of the country, followed by a volcanic eruption that has sent harsh clouds into the air, affecting thousands of people. But this disaster is not just a local issue. Experts say it is a stark reminder of the devastating effects of climate change, which is becoming increasingly evident around the world. Rising temperatures and changing weather patterns are leading to more frequent and intense natural disasters, from hurricanes to wildfires and now volcanic eruptions, and as well as earthquakes. And it's not just Ethiopia. In recent weeks, we've seen a series of mild earthquakes in the southern region, a trend that's raising concerns about the region's seismic activities. Now, we take a closer look at the impact of this disaster in Ethiopia and what it means for the world.
Now, I want you to understand, this is happening this year. These things that right now that I'm showing you, this is this year. This is while the fires are burning in LA. This is happening in Ethiopia. Where are these prophets that only concern themselves with America being Babylon, while other places in the world are experiencing extreme calamity? People are being displaced. Children are starving. Volcanoes are erupting. Earthquakes are happening. Massive floods that are covering multiple countries are taking place. Where is all the false prophets at? Oh, it's only happening in America. America is Babylon. Flee from America and run to where? Run to this? This is where the real Israel is? The land flowing with milk and honey, and they told you the other place that where Israel really is a desert and it's empty and dry. Yet you're seeing drought, famine, earthquakes, volcanoes, all in the place where they keep telling you is the real Israel. The same place where we saw them talk about the year of return, you see the kind of things that are happening there. The largest market in the country burned to a crisp. Massive flooding, loss of life. But they tell you America is the only place that's Babylon. Let's keep watching.
So joining us to discuss this is Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Tafa Jiwa Mabadi. Hopefully I got that correctly. I know I butchered something there. So let me start by apologizing. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's Tafa Jiwa Mabadi.
Thank you so much for coming out, Mabadi. Let's just get started, shall we? How is climate change specifically impacting African countries compared to other regions in the world?
So climate change impacts Africa in various ways. And firstly, what we must note is Africa as a whole, and sub-Saharan Africa in particular, is a climate change hotspot. And what we are experiencing in Africa is an increasing frequency and intensity of weather extremes, predominantly floods, droughts, and heat waves. And these have far-reaching implications and impacts in Africa, which we then see either in agriculture, in transport, health, and other climate-sensitive sectors of our economies. And the impacts of climate change in Africa are particularly worsened by the existing high levels of inequalities, poverty, and high unemployment, which means that a large majority of Africans are therefore highly vulnerable. And also considering that a large population in Africa still resides in rural areas and earn their livelihoods from agriculture, which is mostly rain-fed. It also means that they are particularly vulnerable to rainfall variations and extremes such as floods and droughts, and pushing millions of people into hunger.
Mabadi, I'm glad we're having this conversation about, food security, because then we need to talk about the implications for food security and availability and water availability for Africa. I mean, with the public health crisis that we're facing, we've seen monkeypox, we've seen cholera in clusters in Nigeria and Lagos State. It begs to ask a question about the implications for food security with the.
Now, did y'all hear what she said? Monkeypox, cholera. the various diseases that are spreading also right along with these natural disasters. But where are the false prophets? Where are the Americas, Babylon, and Egypt prophets at when this stuff is happening? Where are they? If this is the promised land, if this is where we're supposed to flee, why are these things happening here? Let's keep watching.
Droughts and with the floods in recent years.
So the implications on food security are quite huge and significant, as we witnessed in recent years, for example, in the Horn of Africa, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, East Africa, as well as more recently in Southern Africa during 2023-24 season, when an El Nino-induced drought drove millions into hunger, and several countries had to declare a state of emergency because of that situation. We've also seen floods decimating crops, throughout in North Africa, East and Southern Africa, again with the same effect. And besides these extremes of drought and floods affecting crops, we also have increasing rainfall variability, which is resulting in declining yields. We are having extreme temperature heat waves, which are also resulting in declining yields, which then affects food availability, as you mentioned, and also affects food price. And many countries have been seeing food price inflation. And again, the poor cannot then afford food, and you've got a lot of food insecurity then happening.
Right.
So it's basically amplifying a lot of things.
Right. And with the amplification of this comes health risks as well. What health risks does climate change pose in Africa? And what are some of the most effective adaptation strategies that African nations can implement to mitigate the impacts of climate change? Very quickly, because we're pressed for time.
So there are various health risks. There are risks to infectious diseases such as cholera, waterborne diseases. When you've got flooding and droughts, you've got risks to things such as malaria as well, which is spreading. The rates of incubation, the geographical reach of mosquitoes is spreading. We've got risks also to climate, heat health, with things such as heat strokes due to extreme weather and heat waves that we're experiencing. And you've got mental health risks as well because of repeated exposure to disasters by particular vulnerable groups.
Right.
So the health are across the entire health spectrum, the risks. And what Africa needs to do really is to strengthen and build a resilient health system that is also inclusive and with equitable access.
All right. As recently, a powerful earthquake and volcanic eruption struck.
Actually, I went back to the beginning. Now, here's something else I want to show you. Because, you got people out here, false prophets, who claim that the real Jerusalem is in the mountains of Ethiopia. But the reason why the Ethiopians haven't built a lot of things in their mountains or in their highlands is because there's too much volcanic activity there. And so even the amount of people and structures there are very sparse. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
The Afar Triangle is a region known for its scorching heat and harsh volcanic landscapes. Beneath the surface, 3 tectonic plates slowly rift and diverge. In recent days, increased seismic activity in this remote part of northeastern Ethiopia has local residents on edge.
Only God knows what the belly of the earth is releasing upon us. We're unable to identify it, and getting close to the site is risky. We're trying to flee with our women, children, and livestock to find a safer place.
In the past month, the US Geological Survey has recorded at least 70 earthquakes around Mount Dauphin. 5 tremors alone in the past 24 hours, including one with a magnitude of 5.7. Since Thursday, nearby residents have started to flee after witnessing steam eruptions from the long-dormant volcano. Fissures running close to the mountain have in recent days started spewing a mix of gas, rocks and mud. No casualties have been reported, but authorities say dozens of properties have been damaged by the earthquakes, while major cracks and mud flows are damaging crucial water pumps and infrastructure.
We have no food to eat. We are displaced and facing significant difficulties. We do not even know where we are going.
Experts say the activity doesn't necessarily mean an eruption of Mount Dauphin is imminent, but these residents aren't leaving anything to chance. Taisok Yuzi, SBS World News.
Now, in the interest of fairness, because I want to show you, things are happening all over the world. And I didn't even show all the videos that I had here because it would take too long. But let's look at disaster in Europe, since we've looked at Africa. Wildfire. Now, this is from about 3 years back. But you didn't hear these prophets talking about this, did you? Turkey, Greece, Italy. Spain. Let me ask y'all something. How many of y'all are familiar with Joe Rogan of the Joe Rogan podcast, right? He's probably the world's most popular podcaster in the entire world, right? He's number one. I'm going to show you that Joe Rogan is more prophetic than these pathetic false prophets. He told about the LA fires before they happened. These jokers wait until something happens and then start declaring it's prophecy.
One day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire is going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a fucking thing we can do about it.
And Wiley's Chilada.
I felt like it could fall apart at any moment. It was always like, I was always waiting for the next earthquake or the next fire. I was evacuated 3 times from my house from fires. Yeah. Last one, 2 houses in front of my house burnt to the ground, right in front of my house.
What the
Yeah, the wildfires were crazy.
Yeah, it's scary, right?
Scary. When you see them coming, you know, I came home from the Comedy Store and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning and me and my wife were looking out the window at the fire coming over the hill. And we made an early call. We said, look, if we're wrong, we'll come back. The house is still here, but let's just get the out of here now. I'm like, that's too close. They weren't evacuating yet. I'm like, let's get out of here. And so we got all of our shit and we got a hotel in Beverly Hills. And then next thing you know, it swept through our neighborhood.
That's horrible.
It burnt 40 houses in my neighborhood.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, it's crazy. It was weird, man. And when you see the walls of flame that are from the left to the right, everywhere you can see is flames. You see houses going up. It's spooky, man. It's spooky like a horror movie. I talked to a fireman once. He was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it. Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do.
You just have to evacuate, right?
Nothing.
So you see that, right? Very interesting, isn't it? Yet, where are all the false prophets? Where are all the prophets? Where are all the false prophets? Why aren't these other places Babylon? They only focus on America.